What's up, guys? My name is John Evans. I coach many of the highest jumpers in the world. You guys might be familiar with some of them: Tony Crosby, Isaiah Rivera, Donovan Hawkins, Josh Rubel, Dominic Gonzalez, now Hoop and Nate. I've also worked with Obi Chamberlain, Ethan Persetti, Travis Reynolds, Dillan McCarthy. All of these guys you can look up and they jump super high. So I like to consider myself one of the best, if not the best, when it comes to writing training for athletes to jump higher. You wouldn't believe what it's like when I tell girls that on a first date. They think it's the most ridiculous thing ever, but pretty good at it. So we're going to talk about something that has plagued me for a long time. And that specifically is injuries, but more specifically, I'm going to talk about my hamstring injury and how I'm kind of working through it, because I know there's a lot of guys out there that probably relate to this or it resonates with them. So I did my full week of training this past week, and it was super intense. There was a lot of running. There was a lot of sprinting. There was jumping involved on certain days. I did power cleans. I did eccentric overloaded lifts, and I didn't necessarily want to have a dunk session, but I did have it planned. So I went in today kind of knowing that it was a higher risk activity, meaning I pulled my hamstring doing it before. I thought I could decrease the intensity a little bit and get to low rimming. So we decided to low rim, me, Dom, Nate. Donovan didn't really, but the three of us did. And so I set a timer for about 35 minutes. And honestly, I should have cut it there. It wasn't until a additional 10 minutes that I added that I ended up getting a little bit of a biceps femoris tweak. I don't know if it's a cramp yet or a pull. If anything, it's grade 1, so it'll be better by next week, but I definitely shouldn't jump. So talking about this in terms of warning signs, I came in day 1, did acceleration development, it felt fine. Hamstring was definitely super sore the following 2 days. Incredibly sore. I didn't necessarily talk about it in the video too much on my YouTube, which if you guys go watch, you can see the full week of training. If you're interested in that and you want to see what the training looks like, go check that out. If you're interested in getting coached by me and hopefully getting your vertical to the upper 40s as like some of these other guys, go to teachmestrength.com and sign up. 6 months free if you purchase a 6-month package. I think it's $9.97. So go check that out. Link is in the description. But warning signs, like I said, I was super sore coming into Tuesday, so I decided to cut the tempo that I initially had planned. Dom and I ended up doing like some bodybuilding circuits and just like lunges, quasi-isometric, because long lever planks tend to be really good for the neuromuscular mechanics of the hamstring. So after that, I was like, okay, I'll wake up on Wednesday. We'll see how I feel. And same thing, was still super sore. So I decided to adjust the session, took out the hamstring work, did some dribbles over the knee, kind of just running like 70%, trying to stay fluid, with a full warm-up as well. Keep that in mind. So I'm getting all the volume from, the A skip, B skip, high knee run, butt kick run, straight leg bound, all that stuff. Thursday came back, did a full circuit, but the intensities were low enough that I wasn't really worried. And then Friday, I had my dunk session planned, like I said. So I came to the session. My medial hamstring was actually lit up quite a bit in terms of it just felt sensitive. And I was like, I've felt this before. I got to be super careful today. So I set my timer for 35 minutes and then pushed it in the last couple of minutes and then added another 10 because I felt okay. I was also having a lot of fun, starting to jump higher on this low rim, which I always encourage guys to do. We finally have access to one. Shout out Will Doyle in Lakeland. And yeah, towards the end of the session, it was like getting pretty tight, but that's like pretty normal when you've had a lot of hamstring pulls. It can be like neuromuscular and you can kind of feel this, ongoing neural feedback from the muscle and try to win. And then it was like the hamstring that's been totally fine. The hamstring muscle that's been totally fine. The biceps femoris, which is on the lateral side of my leg, just kind of grabbed a little bit. It wasn't even a grab. It felt more like a cramp, kind of like the muscle failed. So I cut the session there and was like a little bit worried. I could jog. I felt fine. Then I sat down for a little bit and was editing and then started to feel a little bit more. But a couple takeaways from this, because I think we need to learn from our experiences. If you have an ongoing injury, try to make a hierarchy of things from least provocative to most provocative. So for me, that's going to be upright running is going to be really provocative. And then specifically 1-foot takeoffs are going to be the most provocative. And so if you're going to load really intensely, on a given exercise, keep in mind that that's going to come at some sort of a cost. And in this case, for me, it was, acute muscle damage probably, right? I'm getting pretty high intramuscular tensions. I'm seeing it in the form of like stiffness in running or hops or anything like that. And then decided to push intensity in something that's way higher down that hierarchy. And so another important thing to do and maybe the second takeaway is always have a plan B when you don't feel up to something. So for example, if I went into a session and I had RDLs planned and my hamstring was lit up, I'm either first going to drop the load. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Keep the sets and reps the same. And then if that is still, maybe a little bit questionable, I'd switch the exercise. So in this case, you could do a bent knee hamstring or hip lift. In this case, you could also do hamstring sliders. That would also work with lower loads. Double leg would be good. And if that all else fails, then you could just do band walks or something and load the hip and not necessarily the hamstring, because the hamstring crosses the knee and the hip. So in the case of sprinting, I would maybe do dribbles instead of doing upright running all out, which I did on Wednesday. If it was the case of jumping on 10 feet, that was planned, I would go low rim, which I did. And then the next thing would be cutting the intensity. So I would go to low rim session, cut the intensity, and then I would also cut the time. And so I messed up that last part in that I pushed the time too far. So as my hamstring started to fatigue, the semi or biceps femoris started to kind of take over. I try to win, which I don't have mobile hips. And so my foot was pretty externally rotated. And then it just kind of lit up that lateral hamstring. Fortunately, that's a very strong muscle for me. So I don't expect to be out very long. But mentally, it is definitely difficult. It's a little bit of a derailing sensation. You kind of feel like, you've taken steps backwards and that you're going to lose your progress and all that stuff. And I would encourage you and even myself, I'm kind of preaching to the choir here and preaching to myself. It's not getting too obsessive over that and not getting too into the weeds with it. Just kind of take it as it is, go into the next week with the plan that you initially set out for and make the adjustments the way that I said. So next week, when I go in, I'm not going to do acceleration development on Monday. I'm not going to do all out sprints on Monday. I'll probably do dribbles. I'll probably do step up jumps. I'll probably do something along those lines, or light plyos, where I can still achieve the goal that I set out to do, which is neuromuscular efficiency. Maybe there's some tendon stiffness adaptations if you do it for enough time. And I'll be able to progress forward while doing that without taking steps backwards. And having a plan, I think, is also really, really helpful. So if, again, you're on the training and this happens to you, just ask like, hey, I'm a little bit worried about this exercise or this exercise. Maybe it's your back. If it's your back, I'm going to say, okay, get on the leg extension, get on the belt squat, get on something that's going to unload it. If it's your Achilles, I'm going to say, hey, don't load in bouncy calf raises or do sprints. Maybe instead you just do isometrics. And so having, that hierarchy, like I mentioned previously, is really helpful in finding those substitutes to allow you to still train hard, but move forward. The biggest mistake you can make, though, is stopping training, because you're going to get out of the habit, you're going to get out of the consistency, and you're going to end up truly taking steps backwards. So I believe that even when you have these little hiccups, you can still get better. And I think most of the guys would attest to that, whether it's knee pain or it's Achilles pain or hamstring pull or something like that. You can always do something that will make you better and doesn't necessarily make the injury worse. You just have to figure out what that is. So if it's causing more than like a 2 or 3 in pain, find a substitute, find something that's a little bit easier, do the next best thing. This is actually what Carlos Nassar does all the time. He's a weightlifter. He has shoulder injury and he's supposed to do power snatch. Maybe he just does muscle snatch. If it was his hip or something like that and he had deep squats, maybe instead he just does jerk dip drives or something. So you can always find the next best thing. And that's what I would encourage you to do. In terms of the volumes and stuff, like I said, always use pain as a guide for the intensity and then keep the sets and reps the same. So if I had 6x10 accelerations or 6x15, maybe I'll just do 6x15 high knee runs or something like that, or 6x15 dribble runs. That way I'm still, benefiting from getting some sort of volume, but I'm not necessarily going to get hurt. That's the video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.